Hi Shaunak, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good too, thanks. How was your week?
It was good. It was pretty hectic, but yeah, it was overall a good week.
Okay, that's good. So let's dive in now with the journey that you have been through.
Okay.
So let's dive in with the first question. So what it's like to be a BI engineer at one of the Australian telecommunication sector?
Well, it's quite interesting because Aussie Broadband as a company, it's grown quite a lot in the last 2 years.
Mhm.
So I've been part of a fair share of that growth, and it's been quite an interesting journey, seeing the kind of dedication and motivation that people have in the Australian workspace. I can say that people are really focused and interested in the work that they do.
Okay. So what's your day to day look like there?
Well, my day to day is basically it's mostly generating reports for different functions within the company. I get requests from marketing or sales or even the network engineers regarding data so that they can draw some analysis from that data and make important decisions.
Okay, so what exact kind of a problem do you solve, like a, in the telecommunication industry using the data science, using a data or using a data science concept?
So my role as a BI engineer sits in the perspective where the company's functions can come to us and ask us questions such as why was how many faults occurred today, or what was the performance of the marketing campaign that we just launched.
Mm-hmm.
So part of my role is to extract this data and put together a report. It could be just simple data report, an Excel sheet, or I could be asked to develop a whole Power BI dashboard or a report therein. It can involve things like drawing up metrics that could be useful to that function, or just graphs that can show uh, how the company performed during the past month, the past 6 months, or a year or two.
Okay, so how's the work culture?
Well, in my company, the work culture is pretty. It's. I would say it's quite. I wouldn't say it's quite relaxed, but it would be like people are given their own freedom to explore what they do in their specific roles. They also have a lot of help from their fellow colleagues, be it seniors or your peers or whatever. And people are very dedicated to their work, so it doesn't matter whether it's a lot of work or just a tiny bit that you occasionally get. People try to do their work on time, even ahead of time sometimes. And yeah, I would say that the work culture is quite focused on what they're trying to achieve.
Okay, so now let's dive into your student life, because I know we studied together and you came as an international student in Australia. So how was your student experience?
Well, it's quite mixed because in the beginning it was quite a struggle because I don't think I've lived I don't think I've moved very far for my education or studies before I moved here. So it was quite a struggle initially, just settling down and meeting new people, introducing myself, trying to find out what the others do, being interested in the kind of things that people do here, both locally as well as our fellow international students. So, but over the months and even I'd say across the 2 years, it's been a good experience because I've learned how to manage myself. That is my own time and my work. That includes both the study that I did across 2 years during my master's year, as well as the work that I started about 2 years ago. So just being able to find that right balance of work as well as finding time to play or just enjoy my time around over here. It's been a good experience.
Okay, cool. So which uni did you go to and what course did you do?
Well, I went to RMIT University to do masters in data science. It's a field that's it was an extension of what I did back home in my bachelor's in computer science. So I felt at the time that pursuing data science would be a good fit for my career. It was something that I was interested in doing, particularly because the world was accepting data as kind of like the new fuel, as they would say. So I wanted to see what I can explore and do in this field. And I would say that in all these years that I've spent here, both studying as well as working, that I think every company is sort of trying to take advantage of their data that they have collected or generated over the past decade or so. And it's a good field, it's a good time to be in data science.
Okay, it's nice. So, just a quick thing related to the job, how are you using the things that you have studied during your uni days at your current role?
Well, we learned quite a lot of things in my uni days. It ranged from just your basic handling of your data warehouse or database to even visualizations. We did both did a visualization course, which was quite difficult. And we also did many projects during our time at the university, both for the university as well as external projects. And transitioning from that into work, I would say that it's not that what we study is a whole package. The whole package of what we study will be delivered to us when we finally enter the workforce. It's gonna be like bits and parts. It really depends on what kind of work you have done in the past, so you can get the next step or the next job in your data science role. I would say when I started at my work, I was mainly just focusing on generating reports using SQL from our data warehouse. But since then, I've moved on to things such as developing reports using Power BI. I've done many proof of concepts for the company using things such as Python, trying to implement machine learning models, etc. So yeah, it's not that we'll just be thrown into that kind of work where we're doing the entire data science project, starting from bottom up, collecting data, fixing it up, and then drawing visualizations and the project part. You'll have a bit of the work, and you have to work alongside your colleagues who are also in that space with you. So I would say that you can get a gist of whatever you've done, everything that you've done in the university, but it'll be bit by bit, and that's how actually you grow in your field. So for example, I started like I said, I just started using basic SQL, but now I'm doing quite a lot of Power BI and machine learning and Python. So yeah, it's going to be a gradual shift towards that data science that you studied during university.
Okay. So if we talk about skills, so what one skill do you think one should master while studying so that it might help them to become a BI engineer?
The skill I would say, technical skill I would say is mastering things such as SQL. SQL is a mainstay in every technology company, not even technology company. If you go to any other company which is sort of tech-sided but not a whole technology company, they sort of work around data. So they'll be trying to consolidate their database or data warehouse per se. And so knowing SQL is a big factor because it's going to be a day-to-day activity mostly, especially if you're just starting out in your role. So that is a technical skill that I would say is quite important. But a non-technical skill I would say is communication, the kind of questions you ask your peers and your mentors or your managers, for example, they're going to be quite beneficial because it sort of shows, it sort of tells them that you're interested in this kind of work. You're bringing up the right questions, so they may try to help you with the right kind of answers, or they may point you towards someone or the other who would have that right kind of answer. So that is a skill I would say that people would benefit from developing while they are studying here or if they are just moving here for work.
Okay. So any resources you used while studying that help you to professionally build yourself?
Well, yes. When I was at the university, we went to a lot of meetups that were happening all over the city. Pandemic sort of put a halt to that, but otherwise meetups also happen online.
Correct.
So it's not that you have to be there in person per se, but even if you join something online, if you pay attention to what you're doing and not just keep it on for the sake of it, if you pay attention, questions come to you, and so you should try to post that question or ask that question to anyone around you in that meetup or in that room. That could be beneficial because it builds up your confidence while you're asking these questions. When you're starting out, it can be quite daunting because it's sort of like a culture shift as well. But when you sort of start doing these things, going to meetups, going to events, asking questions, it doesn't really have to be even about that event. It could be anything other than event also, what kind of job are they doing, or how is their job, or what kind of things are they working on. So these kind of questions help you build your confidence once you're transitioning from wherever it is you're coming as an international student to the Australian workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Technical side, I would say that apart from your university assignments and projects that you do, it would be quite helpful if you go online and try to practice things. For example, we did a lot of Kaggle assignments and Kaggle projects that were not related per se to the university assignments, but they helped a lot. It could also be helpful if you try to put yourself out there to get assignments or projects externally, not from the university per se. You get your university assignments and maybe your final year project, but that won't be necessarily enough in itself. But if you can go outside and get some kind of an internship or a part-time job in your field or the field you're looking for, that could be quite helpful. And this sort of intermingles you trying out your technical side as well as your communication bit. It could help you to get those roles in your field.
That's quite a good answer. So next is as we all know, international students struggle to find a job. So how was your job search journey after your graduation?
Well, I sort of graduated during the whole pandemic time. My final year was during the pandemic time, and I graduated during that time. So at that time, I would say it was quite a bit of struggle because not many companies were looking to hire people, especially graduates or international graduates, since it was a tough time for everybody. But the thing is, a lot of our peers, including us, we persevered during that time. We were applying, I think, every day, maybe on an average 3 to 4 jobs every day. And I think towards the end of it, all of our classmates or peers who try to persevere during that time, they eventually landed a job. So yeah, if you persevere, if you try to just hold out, if you try your real best, I think you can land a job. It doesn't really matter how much experience you have. If you have a lot of experience, you're obviously more attractive to the employer. But even if you don't have a lot of experience, you have to keep trying. You have to try to apply. You have to modify your resume possibly to every job, even your cover letter to maybe every job. You can try to tailor it to every job. You can ask people online through LinkedIn or any other mentor you may have to sort of verify your profile, your resume or your cover letter before you send it. And those things can be helpful. So yeah, it's already a matter of your motivation, your perspective. There were also people who came here with the right kind of motivation, but they sort of struggled just like we did, and they eventually tried to quit. But the people who stayed back and who really tried, we've seen them, they've got a job finally.
Correct.
So it's not really hard. It's not really that you will never get a job. It depends on you. Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned about the mentor, so how did you find the mentor?
Well, I mostly went through just asking people. I said communication is key, so I went about asking questions. Initially, I just started asking questions to my professor. So I think that was how I got my first real assignment on the side of the university, because we had this professor who taught us data science as an introductory subject in the first semester. So we asked him questions, and he saw how interested we were. So he pointed us to another team who was working within RMIT, because RMIT is a big university, and they have lots of projects going on during PhD as well as their own projects for their own benefit. So we asked a lot of questions, and people pointed us in the right directions. And it wasn't people just pointed us and we got the job. We had to go through interviews as well. So those kind of things matter. You ask a lot of questions, you ask people the right kind of questions as well, and they will give you advice at least, or point you in the right direction, so you can improve yourself. You can make your skill sets better as well. And yeah, they will be we've seen people who are happy to even mentor you. For example, we worked under this guy who was doing a PhD, who was a PhD mentor per se. He was mentoring PhD students at RMIT. But even though we were not PhD students, he was beneficial for us, because he was ready to mentor us in telling us how to do things, how we should approach things. And I think that would be helpful. Your communication skills matter, your openness to face that kind of face those kind of realities, even questions that they ask you in return, that matters.
So while applying for the job or while sitting at the different interviews, so what kind of questions did the companies or the interviewer ask to you?
Yes, so I think while applying, we should be they should be mindful about the kind of jobs you apply, because we've seen people who just look at jobs, it's a data analyst job or it's a data scientist job, and they just send their resume. But there's a clear difference between those roles, because if you see carefully, right, even on LinkedIn, they post that those roles are either for senior or mid to senior level positions, or maybe they're just for entry level. So you got to see what kind of experience you have, what kind of skills you have, and then apply for the jobs. You don't want to set yourself up for failure right from the beginning. So I think that's important. That is one important thing that I would like to point out. Regarding interview questions, if you fit the bill, they will obviously call you up for interview. Your first rounds will be something like your introductory round. Somebody from the HR will call you and they will ask you questions about yourself. What are you doing? Where are you from? What have you studied? What kind of job experience you have? And it really doesn't say that you don't have to say that you have a lot of experience. You have to be as honest as possible, so that HR person will judge you based on your honesty as well, how clear you are in your communication person. If your communication is not clear, then they will know that they may not progress in the next one. They will shoot you down there. But if your communication is better, then they will progress you ahead. So the way you communicate during that first round is important. Then comes the other rounds, your technical rounds, or there will be cultural rounds as well. Technical rounds, they'll ask you questions, your technical side of things like SQL, if you've done anything in Python, what kind of projects have you done. They try to go in depth on those projects. Your SQL might be just they will ask you certain things. For example, in my interviews, they ask me things like what are CTE queries. Or have you used the with query, or have you used having query? What's the difference between where and having, or group by? How would you use those? How would you use subqueries, or those are just the kind of fundamental questions they will ask. Even in Python, they may ask you things like how can you use recursion, for example, and even in data science, they may ask you a myriad of questions, but just the basic ones in the beginning. They may also go through. They will ask you. For a technical round, coding round, for example. A coding round will involve a questionnaire. They may ask you a question, give you a simple questionnaire, or they may ask you to code up a bit of a small project or an assignment. They will give you a task to do it. You can do it as best as you can, and based on that, they will judge you on your skills. It's not you can just post something off the internet and do it. Because after you do that, in your next round, they will ask you about those questions or that questionnaire. So it's really important to be as honest as possible, even when you're answering those coding rounds. You can try your best. You can even succeed at achieving something off the base of internet. But as long as you know what you're doing, it's important. After that, it's cultural rounds. They'll ask you things such as if you've seen a dispute between your fellow peers, and how do you try to mediate that dispute? How do you try to resolve that dispute? Or they will give you a question, for example, a trick question even and they'll ask you and they'll judge you on the basis of your answers that you're giving. So you have to really be mindful about what they're asking, how you're gonna frame your answer even. That's quite important. I think there's a whole template called the STAR template about answering questions. So you should try to follow that, because a lot of us have followed that. It really doesn't come off right away, but only through practice. So those are some of the things that you have to practice. That would be helpful.
So quite a good advice. So the final question is, any advice would you like to give to someone who wants to pursue that career into a BI engineering?
Okay. Advice, I would say that you shouldn't be. I wouldn't say you should be afraid of the kind of questions you could be asked, or just posting your resume to an interview because say some job has been posted for a mid to senior role, but you feel afraid because maybe you don't have that kind of experience. You can just send your resume if you feel like you can fit the bill, you should send your resume. Not that it should be you're completely off the mark, but you can just send your resume and see how it goes. You can speak to people. If for somebody on the on the technical side, I would say you should just practice every day. There's lots of ways to practice. Lead code is one way, Kaggle is one way. You should try to see where you can formulate a question in your mind regarding the kind of topics that you're interested in. It could be things like sports. Maybe you're interested in sports, so you can see a small problem is there. You can try to formulate a question around it. You can try to find out if you can find data around it, and try to see how you can visualize it. So just simple things like that. Developing a GitHub profile would help, I would say. A lot of people don't really focus on GitHub, but it kind of gives that impression to interviewers, to companies, that this person is really interested in this field. So your projects, whatever personal projects you do, they should be focused around that. Just like be ready for whatever you're gonna answer. You should be like you should have the mentality that if you're not ready, you should be ready to I would say fail, I guess. So just be ready for whatever comes along your way. Be open to it. Be open to whatever criticism comes along your way. Be ready to accept it. Try to improve yourself every day. Everyone else around you is doing it. So
Yeah.
would be helpful.
Yeah. So I'll put the links that you mentioned about the GitHub or the Meetup thing.
Yeah.
So I'll put inside down the description. So thank you very much for your time on the Saturday afternoon. Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
So,